So I wish when I had started calisthenics a few years back, there was a video like this out there, basically telling me what not to do, what to do, how to prevent injury. And for some of you watching out there, you might know me from my muscle up world records or my competitions. So I'm making this video sort of as the ultimate A to Z calisthenics guide for anyone watching out there that wants to get started. And the best way to watch this video is to bookmark it, and I'm gonna put some timestamps right on the screen right now. And so whenever you progress or you wanna learn a certain skill, just come back to this video and just go through it. It should be a guide that you can come back to and watch. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let's get into the first few rules that you need to know. Firstly, never skip a warm-up. This is the ultimate rule, the golden rule. Write that down on your wall. Don't ever skip a warm-up, unless you want to get injured, that is. Secondly, never skip the basics. You need to master the basics. And lastly, prepare for accelerated returns. So what I mean by that is at the beginning, calisthenics is kind of like this hockey stick graph where everything's boring, nothing's happening, and then it just shoots up to exciting skills and different moves that you can do. So pull-ups turn into muscle-ups, which turn into explosive muscle-ups, handstands turn into handstand push-ups, you start doing human flags, you start doing some crazy skills that you never probably thought you could do. But that's because you stuck in the game for a long enough period of time to see those accelerated returns. So I want everyone to kind of understand that at the beginning, it might seem boring, but trust me, if you stick through that sort of baseline foundation of building the strength up needed, you'll quickly do these advanced skills. And with that being said, here are the 3 skills which I'm going to teach you. So we've got the push-ups, pull-ups, and then we've got dips. Now, before any of that, I want to go through a quick 5-minute warm-up, and you'd rather do this 5-minute warm-up than spend 5 months injured, because trust me, I know the pain. I've injured my wrist, I've injured my forearm, and I've spent months out of training just because I thought I could skip a warm-up, and literally nobody can, because your body needs to be accustomed to the force and the pressure that you're applying to it when you go ahead and do calisthenics. So the first thing to warm up is your wrist. So what you want to do is get on the floor and slowly lean, apply pressure with your wrist for about 5 to 10 seconds. Then rotate your arms sideways and apply pressure again, and then do the same thing, apply pressure once you've rotated them backwards, like so. Do all 3 positions twice, so front, side, and back. Do that twice over, and remember, you're just leaning forwards and leaning backwards slowly. You're not trying to apply too much pressure, it's just slow and controlled, right? Then you can move on to wrist rotations, which is basically just doing this with your wrist for 30 seconds or so. And this is a really good way to get the wrist activated and warmed up. If you want to go the extra mile with your wrist, what I would recommend is getting a resistance band and doing some wrist flexions and extensions on each arm. So do 10 of each on each arm, and that will really get your wrist working and sort of activated again, because once you do a handstand or once you do a push-up, you're sort of doing this with your wrist, and that's a lot of force. Like imagine you weigh 260 and you're applying that much pressure on your wrist. It's a lot of force, and so you want to go that extra mile and warm up those wrists. So next up we have shoulders, and I only do one exercise for this, which is shoulder dislocations with a resistance band. So start with your arms maybe slightly wider than shoulder width apart, and see if you can rotate your arms back and forth, and you'll really feel a stretch. It might be in your chest area, but it also might be in your shoulders as well, and you want to try and get your arms as close as possible. Now, if your shoulders aren't flexible enough to do shoulder dislocations yet, then what you want to do is sit down on the floor and put your arms out as close as possible so you can really feel your shoulders stretch. Alternatively, put your arms on something like a sofa or your bed and squat down to feel the stretch. Hold this for about 30 seconds, but don't go past anything that's uncomfortable, because we're just warming up right now. We're not stretching, we're just simply warming up and activating some of the parts of our body that we're going to be using. So we've done our wrists, we've done our shoulders, and the last thing is a bicep stretch, which takes 10 seconds on each arm. So put your hand on a wall, and then you want to rotate your body as far out as possible. And what you'll feel is a real nice stretch going across your bicep. And what this helps with is it helps alleviate any potential forearm or tendon problems that you might occur. I wish someone would have told me, okay, basically 12 months ago, if they had told me about this, I wouldn't have gotten injured. And doing this stretch has basically helped me alleviate any injuries throughout my training right now, and it's the #1 stretch that I do. So with that being said, that's the warm-up out of the way. It only takes 4 or 5 minutes. I know I explained it thoroughly, but that's because it's the most important part of the video. So now we can get onto the juicy parts, which is actually learning some calisthenics. So let's get into it.
All right, y'all, so I'm gonna run you through a bunch of different push-up variations. So the first one is a standard push-up, which essentially just looks like this, okay? Now, one thing you'll note is my back is completely straight. So a lot of people, the 2 mistakes I see when people do a push-up is actually their back is like this or it's like this. You wanna make sure it's literally straight, and then you go all the way down and all the way back up. The main mistake that I do see is people are like, yeah, I can do 50 push-ups, and a push-up looks like this. That's not a push-up. You need to go all the way down, almost as if your chest is touching the floor, and all the way back up and lock your elbows on the way up like this, okay? So that's the normal push-up. Damn, it's actually harder than I thought, talking and actually doing an exercise. All right, so I finally got my breath back and I can talk a little bit. So we're gonna go through explosive muscle ups, which look like this, okay? So it's slow on the way down and then fast, all right? Slow, fast, slow, fast. And on the way up, you want to kind of use as much power and as much force as possible because it develops those fast muscle twitch fibers, which translate to being powerful with pull-ups, being powerful with muscle ups, and a lot of other skills. So that's one thing that I would recommend doing. And with this, you want to actually do less reps. So you want to do around 6 to 8 reps of this, but really powerful. Okay, so I will go at my full power and I'll show you. Cool, so hopefully me doing those explosive push-ups made you understand sort of the power that you actually need when going about doing that. And the next progression from this is essentially elevated push-ups. So get your feet on a box, okay, or maybe it could be your bed, and then you just start doing push-ups from this point on. So you go like this, right? And as you can see, my back is still straight. So it's not like this, it's not like this, it's straight. And we go down and up, down and up, okay? Now, why this is good is because it gives you higher range of motion, right? So you can see when I do a normal push-up, I'm just like this, okay? But when I'm on a box, right? Look how much higher I'm going and how much further down I'm going, okay? And that gives you much more of a stretch, right? So that would be the next progression, basically. You do your normal push-ups, you do your explosive push-ups, then you should have enough power to basically crank out a ton of box or elevated push-ups, if you want to call them that. Cool, so now I'm going to go through 2 more push-up variations, and the next one are diamond push-ups. So you get your hands like this in a triangle, okay? You place them down, and then you go down, and you go back up. And as you can see, my elbows, they're not flaring out, they're like this, and my hands are still kept in this position. So I'm going in and out. Pause. All right, so down and up, all right? That's kind of what you want to do when it comes to diamond push-ups. So that's the diamond push-ups done. I really like doing them because I can spam them, and then when you get to those high rep ranges, you really do feel a burn in your triceps. Now, the last one that I'm going to show you guys is called a Russian push-up, and it looks like this. So it's a normal push-up, okay? But on the way down, you do this, right? And then when you piece it together, it looks like this. So it's one movement, right? So you go down, you put your elbows on the floor, and you come back up. Personally speaking, I think it's good to do this for a beginner because you actually get some kind of power in your elbows developed, right? So on the way down, you go like this, but then on the way up, it's like a movement that you're probably not used to, and so it is important to learn this skill. But in my opinion, as you get to more advanced skills like muscle ups and stuff like that, you're already doing that movement. And so for me personally, I don't do this on a regular basis, but it's pretty cool and fun to learn. So if you want to have a go at it, go for it. But that's push-ups done.
Now, the next thing that I wanted to quickly mention before we move on to the pull-ups is actually the importance of full range of motion. So the next few exercises that I'm going to go through, you really need to build a good habit of full range of motion. So what I mean by that is when you do pull-ups, you want to go all the way up and all the way down. And I see a lot of people on their pull-ups, they say, oh, I can do 20, 30 pull-ups, but actually when they go down, they're sort of going down here instead of all the way extended. All right, so make sure you always have in the back of your mind to lock out your arms and to always have full range of motion, because otherwise you'll build this bad habit, which is very hard to get rid of. All right, next up we've got the pull-up and the chin-up, and this is a skill which I see a lot of people saying, oh, I'll never be able to learn a pull-up, I can never do a chin-up, it's too hard, this, that, and the other. But I'm gonna show you exactly how you can go about progressing and getting your first pull-up or chin-ups. Now, before you do anything when it comes to pull-ups and chin-ups, learn to get comfortable with a dead hang, which is not only a great way to decompress your spine and relieve tension in your muscles, but it also helps improve grip strength and endurance as you can hold onto the bar for an extended period of time. So what you wanna do is just start by jumping onto the bar bar and hang. And once you're hanging, almost imagine that someone's pulling you down from your legs. So you want to try and make your body as long as possible and just really stretch out your back, if that makes sense. And then what you want to do is time how long you can stay on the bar. And a good benchmark to follow is try and get to at least a 30-second dead hang. If you can't do a 30-second dead hang, you need to work towards doing that. And what you can do for this in terms of improving your dead hang time is to do 10 seconds off, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 10 seconds on, and it really builds up the endurance and it gets your forearms used to the pressure which you're going to be applying when it comes to pull-ups and chin-ups. Now getting onto the chin-ups, if you're well versed in push-ups and dead hangs are becoming easier for you, a chin-up is going to be inevitable. So now what you do is you place your hands on the bar and you slowly jump up, okay? And then you jump back down. And when you do this again and again and again, your body gets used to that movement. And now what you can do is you can jump up, hold yourself where your head is above the bar, and then slowly come back down on the eccentric movement. So you jump up in a fast motion and then you slowly come back down, and that builds out that force required in your muscles to pull yourself up and pull yourself back down. And do this over and over again and you'll quickly find how soon you'll improve and get that chin up of yours. I then recommend getting out a resistance band and wrapping it around the bar and doing the same jumping motion, but this time don't jump too high, just sort of use that resistance band as a little bit of a boost. Okay, so on the way up with your chin up, you sort of jump up and then you slowly go up and then slowly come back down with the resistance band. And if you can do it with a resistance band, it's just about practice, okay? So you get better and better by just doing this jumping exercise, slowly coming up, slowly coming down, all right? And that's what you need to do to get good at chin-ups. Now, a good plan to follow when learning a chin-up is to do 10 jumping chin-ups. Now, obviously rest in between certain sets or certain reps. So give yourself as much rest as you need, but do 10 of these and then get a resistance band and do 10 slow and controlled reps on the way up and the way down. And what you want to do when using a resistance band is start at a dead hang, okay? You don't want to be swinging too much because that will make it too easy. You want to start with your elbows locked out and then slowly come up and slowly come down, and try and do 10 of these. And eventually over time you will get that chin up, because if you do those two exercises, jumping and then with a resistance band, it's a matter of time. But once again, it goes back to the point which I've been trying to make in this video, which is prepare for accelerated returns. It's going to be boring, but if you stick with it, you will get a chin up. So please stick with it. Don't get discouraged. I know it might be a hard skill to learn, but eventually you'll get it in the bag. Now, if chin ups are becoming easier for you, what you can do is make it harder by ideally starting at a dead hang and clearing your neck on the way up and holding it at the top without any resistance band and coming back down, and then again holding that dead hang, coming back up and coming back down, and try and do this for as many sets and reps as possible. So that's chin up sorted. Now we can move on to pull-ups, which is the exact same method and approach which I just talked about. So you want to get your hands facing yourself now, because you're doing a pull-up instead of a chin-up. The pull-up is where your hands are facing you, okay? And then you want to jump up on the bar and then slowly come back down. Jump up on the bar fast and then slowly come back down. Then get out a resistance band and do a dead hang, okay? So start at a dead stop, okay? And then pull yourself up and then pull yourself back down as slow and controlled as possible. And then you want to do 10 reps of each. So 10 jumping pull-ups, 10 resistance band pull-ups where it's slow and controlled. And if you do this back and forth over a few weeks, you will eventually master the pull-up. So that's chin-ups and that's pull-ups sorted. You can do wide arm pull-ups as well if you want to blow out your back and it really builds out your lats and gives you this V-shaped tapered body. So that's kind of what you want. And wide arm pull-ups I've found have worked wonders for me. So what you want to do with this again is you start at a dead hang, you lift yourself up and you really feel that squeeze at the top where you can feel your back muscles squeeze, and then you slowly come down. That's what I would do for pull-ups. You can do close grip and all of these other fancy skills, but in my opinion, the best pull-ups to do are normal pull-ups and wide arm pull-ups, and that's really all you need to do. A good target to aim for with your pull-ups and chin-ups is to be able to do 10 pull-ups and 10 chin-ups. And the best way to improve your rep range for anything, but especially pull-ups and chin-ups, is every minute on the minute training. So you take your max amount of reps and you divide it by 3. So let's say your max amount is 10 reps in a set for pull-ups. You divide that by 3, so let's just say 3 reps, and you do that every minute. So you get out a stopwatch, you do 3 reps, wait till 1 minute goes by, then you do another 3 reps, wait for another minute, then you do another 3, and you do this for 10 minutes. So you do 10 minutes of every minute on the minute training, and watch your numbers go up like crazy. Watch you be able to go from 10 reps to 15 reps in a row, right? And it just happens so quickly. I went from being able to do 10 pull-ups to I think 20 pull-ups within like a month. just from doing every minute on the minute training. It's the same training style that I use for my world records, and I would advise literally everyone watching, if you want to improve your rep range in calisthenics, to do EMOM training, which is the best style in my opinion. Next up are dips, which are a great exercise for developing your triceps. You can probably do this with 2 chairs at home or near your kitchen area, and all it requires you to do is get your body in a straight position, shoulder width apart, making sure your elbows are straight at the top, slowly coming down all the way, and then going back up until your elbows are locked out in a straight position. A few quick tips that I would give when learning dips is to make sure that your shoulders are up and your chest is up too, because what you don't want to do is sort of be slouching mid-air during a dip, because it doesn't engage your chest muscles effectively and it isn't the right form. So make sure you're sort of keeping your body in the straight line position. And if you are new to dips or finding them difficult, what you can do is just practice the eccentric. So get yourself on 2 chairs or a dip bar. Ideally, that's kind of what you want. And then you go slowly down, all right? And then you can use your feet to jump back up. So you go slowly down with no assist, and then you go slowly back up, right, by just doing a little bit of a jump. And that's the best way to kind of get good at a dip, all right? It's just about your muscles getting used to the force of pulling your body weight all the way up and all the way down. Now, another skill to learn if you want to build out your back and your biceps is inverted rows. So you kind of have to have a dip bar to do this. And what you want to do is start with your feet as far out as possible with your hands facing forwards, and then pull slowly up. And on the way up, all right, you want to squeeze your back muscles as hard as possible, and you really feel it on your back. It's a really good exercise. And then on the way back down, you go really slow, and then you keep repping this out. And if you can do this slow and controlled, your back muscles will literally blow up. Another thing that I was quickly going to mention is calisthenics uses a lot of your shoulders, and you want to repeatedly and consistently be strengthening them. And the best exercise is very simple and effective, is to get an exercise ball or a medicine ball and just hold this up for 5 minutes. All right, that's literally all you need to do. And we did this in gymnastics when we were very young, and it's one of the best exercises that I still do to this day. And you don't just have to use an exercise ball. You could use a weighted plate, you could put some books in a bag and just lift it up and hold this for as long as possible. Again, it's not the most fun exercise, but you'll feel that burn in your shoulders, and it will kind of tell your body like, yo, this is the amount of force required for us going forwards, and we're gonna get used to it. And if you keep doing this exercise on an ongoing basis, it will really help. And another just quick little exercise that I would suggest doing is get yourself on a dip bar if you can, or somewhere that you can do dips, okay? And then do shoulder shrugs. Shoulder shrugs are great because it helps build out your traps, and it also helps you squeeze at the top and squeeze at the bottom. So the best way to do this is start in a slow and controlled position so you're not swinging, and then slowly shrug up and then come back down. So do a quick shrug up and then come back down. And if you do this, you can spam it. So you can do 50 reps of this. It isn't that kind of exercise where you should only do 8 to 12 reps. It's one of those exercises where you want to do as many reps as possible and just spam it until your shoulders are sore, all right? And those two, just lifting the exercise ball up and then doing shoulder shrugs, will definitely build out your shoulders and help you stay conditioned for the next couple of exercises. All right, next up we've got handstands. This is where things get fun and interesting. And a lot of people I hear say, oh, I'll never be able to learn a handstand, it's so hard, it's so difficult, when actually all they need is the strength. And then the balance is something that you can work on. So the best way to learn a handstand, and I've taught this to some of my friends, is to basically kick up against the wall, all right? And then come back down. So what you're doing is you're learning the balance part first, all right? So get your hands near a wall, okay? And then you kick up and then you kick back down. And you do this for a few times, all right? So when you are up against the wall, don't try and hold it, because what will happen is you'll quickly get fatigued. So you just want to kick up, hold it for a second, and then come back down. And you do this for a few reps every single session that you start learning handstands, and then that will get you used to not only the force required to hold yourself up midair, but also it helps with the balancing aspect of it as well. Now, once you get a bit more comfortable with kicking up against the wall, you want to start focusing on correcting your form, because a lot of beginners, the reason why they can't do a handstand is because your back is arched. Even I can't do an arched handstand and hold it midair. It's literally hard, you know, because think about how hard it is to do a handstand like this. It's not gonna happen. You have to be straight, almost like an arrow in the air. And what you wanna do for this is to make sure that your shoulders are squeezed, all right? Your legs are straight, but also your glutes are squeezed as well, because that engages your core, which is also what's needed when it comes to balancing. So if you're up against the wall, all arched and looking like a bracket shape, it's not gonna happen, all right? You can't translate a bad handstand up against the wall wall into a real handstand with no assist in the air. Like, it's not gonna happen. So you need to really focus on the form when it comes to your handstand. Now, the progression from this is to then slowly start bringing your hands as close to the wall as possible. So what do I mean by this? So you might have started out with your hands maybe 1 feet away from the wall, all right? Now what you wanna do is bring them closer and closer, and almost to a point where now they're touching the wall. And so what it would look like when you look at this from a side angle is a straight line. And now it's just about the balance aspect. And the best way to practice balancing for a handstand is to kick up against the wall and then slowly let one leg off against the wall and then bounce back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's kind of what you want to do. And hopefully you get the gist of it. So you have your hands on the floor, all right? And then you're slightly arched, and then you're coming off the wall and then coming back on, coming off the wall and then coming back on. And if you do this for, I would say, 5 times per set, and you do a few sets of this, make sure you rest in between so you give your shoulders and your wrists a little bit of a breather. If you do this, what will happen is eventually you'll kick off against the wall and you'll find yourself midair holding a handstand. And that's kind of what you want to get to a point of. So yes, you need to build up the strength in your shoulders, but once you've done that and you focused on engaging your core, squeezing your glutes, your handstand form should be correct. And now it's just about balance. And all balance is with handstands is time, all right? Over time, if you practice kicking up against the wall and off the wall and just going back and forth, eventually you'll master the handstand and it will become very easy for you. So if you want to take this to another level with the progression of the handstands, what you can do is now face the wall and do some walkouts and walk-ins. So you want to walk with your hands up against the wall. So you start off basically with your hands as far out as possible and you start slowly walking in. And then you get to a point where your head is literally, your face is touching the wall, all right? And this is very difficult. If you try this, you'll find it's very difficult to not only balance because you might topple over, but also it engages your core and it burns with your shoulders. And if you keep walking out and walking back in, you're not only helping yourself learn not only the balance side of the handstands, but also the strength element of handstands. And if you just combine all of these few exercises, so you kick up against the wall and then you do the walk-ins and walk-outs, trust me, you'll be able to do a handstand. Like, it's literally inevitable for it to happen, okay? Now, what do you do from here? Well, it's very simple. You just go for it. All you gotta do is just start practicing, okay? And make sure, again, you're practicing with the right form. You get up against the wall, have really good form, and try and hold it for 45 to 60 seconds at least, all right? And eventually you'll be able to hold a handstand for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, all right? Now, another popular calisthenics skill is handstand push-ups, and there's a few solid ways to get good at this. But firstly, what you wanna do is see if you can actually do a handstand push-up, all right? So if you've mastered the handstand and you wanna try a handstand push-up, just try it. So get up against the wall, see if you can do the push-up, and if you can't, you need to go back to the basics. And the basics are pike push-ups and elevated pike push-ups. So what I mean by that is you get on the floor in a pike position and have your hands as close to your feet as possible. So if that's hard for you, then start with your hands further out, do a few push-ups. So I would say do 10 reps of this in a set, then rest, then do another 10 reps, all right? And then keep going and build that strength up. Then what you want to do is transition to elevated pike push-ups. So you get your feet on your bed or you get them on a box, and then you start doing an elevated pike push-up with your hands as close to you as possible. And that's what builds up the strength, because that movement very much mimics a handstand push-up, except now your legs are on a box. And so now what you want to do is go back to kicking up against the wall and start by practicing those push-ups. And you should have built that strength up if you've been practicing the pike push-ups over a period of time. Another thing that you can do to practice a handstand push-up is to actually have your face facing the wall and then practice the push-up part, because that might be a bit easier, right? You want to really make sure you mastered holding a handstand in the air with really good form and then transition onto learning handstand push-ups. That's the beauty about calisthenics, is it's like an art in itself, because you have to not only have strength, but you've got to have the balance and you've got to engage your core and make sure everything is squeezed and looks perfect and the form is, top tier. And that's what you got to do, all right? So make sure you go back to the basics if you're struggling with handstand push-ups, which is to hold a handstand in the air for at least 10 seconds, all right?
Cool, so I wasn't gonna put this in the video, but I thought I'd teach at least the basics of learning a tuck planche, because there must be someone out there that wants to start out on their planche journey and this might help them out. So basically a tuck planche looks like this, right? So I'll just hold it for a couple of seconds so you get an idea. Whew. all right? It takes a lot out of you. It might look easy, but trust me, it isn't. And so the first thing that you want to do is warm up your wrist. And if you haven't warmed them up, just don't attempt this, because it's probably one of the skills where you're most prone to a wrist sprain. So just warm up your wrist, right? The next thing that you kind of want to do is, if I go sideways, then you'll be able to see me a little bit better. You want to do a frog stand. Now, a frog stand looks a bit funny, but it actually helps you build a lot of strength for planches, and it looks like this. So that's what a frog stand basically looks like. Essentially what I have is, I'll show you from a front angle. I have my arms like this, and then I sort of wedge them in between my knees, if you can see. So we go like this, we slightly bend our elbows, and then my feet, they're lifted off the ground. And what this is a really good progression for learning the tuck planche, because a tuck planche is this, and a frog stand is this. And so what you can do is just sort of bounce up and down in this frog stand position. Again, it looks hella funny like when you do it, but actually you'll figure out it's quite difficult at the beginning. And then when you get used to that movement and that motion, you'll then be able to go ahead and learn a tuck planche. Now, personally, I'd recommend learning it on the planche or the parallettes, because it puts less strain on your wrist. Otherwise, if you don't have access to that, just make sure you warm up your wrists and you'll be good to go.
All right, so moving on, we have core. Now, before I get into my core workout, what I usually do is I stretch out my hip flexors. So I lie on the floor and I bring my knee as close to my chest as possible. I hold this for about 45 seconds on each leg, and that opens up those hip flexors. For abs, essentially there's about a gazillion different workout routines out there and so many different exercises that you can follow. But this ab routine I've used for the past 4 or 5 years. It's all I do. I do this 1 to 2 times a week, and it's a killer because it not only builds out an aesthetic physique, but it also builds out that core strength. So it's the best of both worlds, and I think will be really beneficial for anyone watching to follow this. So with that being said, this is how the ab routine goes. All right, so first things first, get a timer ready and start by holding yourself in a dish shape for 30 seconds. Once those 30 seconds are up, now start doing flutter kicks. After those 10 seconds, you want to switch and now be moving your legs side to side. And after those 10 seconds are up, you want to go back to flutter kicks, and then that will be a whole minute done. So you do 30 seconds of a dish shape hold, 10 seconds of flutter kicks, 10 seconds of side to sides, and another 10 seconds of flutter kicks right there. All right, that's 1 minute done. Then what you want to do is turn around, okay? Give yourself 10 seconds of rest and go into a plank position. Now, if you've never done a plank before, what you want to do is aim to be as straight as possible throughout the entire hold, and also squeeze your glutes, okay? This is very important. Most people, when they do a plank, they put a lot of the force on their shoulders. And so what you're really doing is actually doing a shoulder workout instead of an ab workout. And so what you want to do is squeeze your entire body, especially your glutes, so you really feel it in your core, and hold this for 60 seconds, okay? Now, once those 60 seconds are up, that's 1 round. I then do about 3 or 4 rounds of this. Now, obviously, if you've never done something like this before, I'm not expecting you to go ahead and do 4 rounds of this ab workout. It's pretty crazy and intense, but just try and do as much as you can, okay? And this is what I do. I do it pretty much once or twice a week, every single week without fail. Now, I was actually gonna mention on my last circuit, so let's say I do 3 rounds of this. On the final round, I've done 40 seconds of a plank. Let's say the last 20 seconds, what I'll do is I'll make myself as low to the ground as possible. So I'll literally stay in that straight line with all my body kind of squeezed tight, so I'm really engaging my core, but I'll make myself as low to the ground as possible, and it really burns your abs. Like, you're genuinely guys, you will feel this in your core like nothing else you felt before. All right, so last up are legs, which is like everybody's worst nightmare. Nobody wants to do leg day, everyone hates it, but I thought even if you train legs on the 33rd of each month, you know, this might come in handy, okay? So with that being said, there are a few leg exercises that you can use on your leg day, all right? So you've got squats, pistol squats, Nordic curls, and calf raises. Those are really the only 4 leg exercises that I would recommend. I'd maybe throw in box jumps for explosive power. That's actually quite beneficial, but you could probably alternate between that and squats. So with that being said, let's go through each one step by step, okay? So first up are the squats. Squats, your favorite influencer chick has probably already covered this in detail, but it's real simple. All you do is you place your feet shoulder width apart, okay? You have your hands out in front of you and you slowly go down and slowly go back up. You want to squat down just a little bit to where you can really feel that tension in your quads as opposed to in your glutes, okay? Now, one thing I would say with squats is you need to do tons of volume unless you want to add weight. And I would recommend, this is one of the main exercises, I would recommend weight over body weight. So I would recommend getting a 20 kg weighted vest or just throwing books in a bag and doing squats on that, because otherwise, to really build out those quads, you're gonna have to do hundreds of squats just for you to make any kind of progress. And in my opinion, unless that's what you want to do, I would suggest to have some weight added to you whilst you do these squats, all right? Now, the next thing that you can do is, if you don't want to add weight, you can actually just do pistol squats, which also help build out your quads, but it also works on the mobility and balance aspect of it, which is really good. So it's basically killing two birds in one stone. Now, for pistol squats, it's essentially a one-legged squat, and I'd recommend holding onto the wall at the beginning, as you want to keep your body as straight as possible, because again, this is one of those exercises where balance is required. Now, as you lower down, focus on sitting back down on the floor. So what you want to do is almost imagine yourself going all the way down to the floor. Now, if you've never done it before, maybe just go down a little bit and then gradually go down to the point where you're almost touching the floor. Now, on the way up, you want to make this slow and controlled as well, but you want to have your back kept straight, okay? And you also want to imagine the leg that you're standing on, you're pushing it down with all your force. So imagine you're doing a pistol squat on your right leg, okay? You want to make sure that you're imagining your right leg being pushed down. So you want to push down all the force on your right leg and then you'll come back up, okay? So that's how you correctly do a pistol squat. That's the best way that I can explain it. All right, so the next one is actually called Nordics or Nordic curls. And a lot of athletes use this. Footballers, NFL players, gymnasts, everybody that I know that is an athlete does this. And the reason being is because it actually prevents a ton of injuries. So firstly, you want to find yourself a cushiony surface, okay? And ideally, you want to have someone holding your feet. Now, if you don't have any friends, that sounded crazy, but if you don't have anyone able or around to help kind of hold your feet down, maybe get a bit creative with this. So wedge your feet underneath a sofa, and then what you want to do is slowly go down, okay? Now, when you are going down, one thing to note is you want to have your back straight, because a lot of people, when they do Nordics, they sort of do like a little bit of a crunch, and that's not what you want to do. You want to have your back straight on the way down, because then it means that you're activating your legs instead of just flopping all the way to the floor. So basically, just make sure you're leading with your chest and maintaining a controlled descent. As you lower, allow your body to lean forward until your chest is as low to the floor as possible. And remember, your hips should remain in line with your knees and your back needs to be kept straight. Again, if you're new to this, what you can do is actually use your hands to just push up off the floor. But make sure you keep your whole body straight as you do this, because otherwise you're not really doing anything. You're literally just flopping up and flopping back down, and that's not what you want to do. You want to make sure that your back is straight and your hips are also straight, and so when you do this, you're at least activating part of your hamstring. And Nordics, they take a lot of time to learn because they're very, very difficult. It requires a lot of force, but trust me, once you master this, it's one of those exercises that you can implement all the time. All right, so last up are calf raises. Now, calf raises are really easy to learn. All you got to do is get yourself a flat surface, something a little bit higher than the ground, so then you can actually go all the way down. So for me, I use a push-up bar. I stand on that and I have my hands touching the wall. Again, what you want to do is make sure that your hands aren't exactly leaning on the wall, but rather they're just touching it for balance purposes, okay? And now what you want to do is you want to go up slowly and go down real slow as well. So you really feel that stretch on the way up and on the way down as well. One thing with calves is they're a very stubborn muscle. So it's not that calves are purely genetic, it's actually the fact that most people don't train it hard enough. It's not one of those muscles where you want to do 8 to 12 reps. You actually want to spam the reps when it comes to calf raises, because that's what's going to actually allow you to grow it. So that's basically all the basic skills covered. You've learned push-ups, pull-ups, chin-ups, handstands, core workouts, legs. Like, you've learned everything about calisthenics that you need to know to get started. But how do you piece together all those gazillion different skills into a weekly schedule? And so what I've done is I put together a training plan, which is linked in the description, and it kind of goes through exactly what you could do on each day step by step, and it goes into a bit more detail on each specific exercise with everything kind of laid out for you, because there's so many skills that you may want to learn or may want to get into, but having a proper training structure is how you're going to make progress through your calisthenics journey. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to do is answer this question, which is how many reps should I do? I get asked this all the time on Instagram, and I'm going to answer it. And the answer is as many as you can. All right, now a ton of fitness influencers out there, they'll say do 8 to 12 reps for maximum muscle growth and all of this, right? And the reason they say this is because they're training purely in the gym. All right, and they're doing weighted stuff, but you're doing body weight stuff, and so you're less prone to injury. And the good thing about spamming tons of reps in calisthenics is you're then gonna advance onto those harder skills. So like, for example, if you can do 50 reps of push-ups in one go, you can easily do 10 handstand push-ups. You've got the strength to do it. If you can do, I guess, 10 to 15 pull-ups, you can do a few muscle-ups. And if you can do 5 to 10 muscle-ups, you can do an explosive muscle-up. And so what I'm trying to say is once you put in the reps and you pay your dues and you do hundreds and hundreds of reps per exercise, especially on the basics, those advanced skills become so much easier later on. And so, like I said, if as long as you're warming up correctly, as long as you're using the proper form, there's no reason as to why you can't go past what your perceived limits are in this journey of calisthenics. All right, so that is pretty much it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I just started this new channel and we're going to be dropping bangers. I've got my world record videos coming out. I've got some training clips and also competitions of mine. So be sure to stick around because yeah, the uploads are just going to get crazier and crazier as we go on. And so if you did find any value in this video, be sure to like the video, comment down below as well if you have any video suggestions for me to make in the future. And with that being said, I'll talk to you guys in the next one, and good luck on your calisthenics journey. Peace.